Enough inhumanity, enough corruption, enough insanity, and enough obstruction, enough police shooting, and enough obeying Putin, enough climate change denying, enough of our kids dying, enough of the Klan, and enough of that man. This election is our democracy's last stand.
Welcome to the third episode of Democracy's Last Stand. I'm Michael D'Antuono, the artist, activist, sometimes referred to as the Rockwell of the Resistance. Now, you might have heard, our democracy is under attack. And the crazy thing? It's coming from our own president and his enablers in Congress. So we all have to do what we can to save this democracy. Tonight, we'll be talking to a couple of very interesting fellows. We're going to show you some great videos, but most of all, we're going to unleash the inner activist in you. So what do you say? Let's get started. Tonight's guests include Toure, who is, among other things, a cultural critic, podcaster, television personality, and author of several books, including The Portable Promised Land, Soul City, Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness, and What It Means to Be Black Now. Also with us is one of my favorite news personalities, Elie Mystal. Elie is a graduate from Harvard Law School. He currently serves as the nation's justice correspondent and is one of the few people brave enough to spread his wisdom and charm on both cable news networks MSNBC, CNN, and the fake news network, Fox. My next guest is many things. Among them, he's a Harvard-educated lawyer, provocateur, and TV personality. And the key word being personality. If I see Elie on TV, I put my paintbrush down and watch. Because he gives us the cold, hard facts with just a spoonful of humor to make the medicine go down that much easier. So welcome, Elie.
Thanks for having me. No pressure. I have to be interesting and stuff.
You could do it. You could do it. One hand behind. Now, you were also the editor of Above the Law, right?
I was. That was before I stepped up to the Nation. The Above the Law is a great blog. It's really focused on law and legal issues for lawyers. And I had that job for 11 years before I went to the Nation full time last year to be their justice correspondent.
Uh-huh. Now, that was established in 2006, 10 years before Trump. Did you ever, in your wildest nightmares, think that we would have a president who is actually above the law?
You know, obviously I didn't. I wrote, I think in early 2015, I wrote an entire well-reviewed post about how Trump's nascent candidacy wasn't real because as soon as the FEC, Federal Elections Commission, made him release his tax returns, he would drop out of the race. Yeah. I guess technically I could still be right about that, but in force and effect, I mean, I was desperately wrong about Trump's the reality of a Trump presidency. But Michael, you know, what I wasn't wrong about, and what I did see coming, is the FedSocization of our legal system, right? And it's something that we don't kind of talk about enough, I feel. But like, Trump only exists because there has been an entire Republican structure put in place to prop up exactly this kind of crazy, bigoted, authoritarian strongman. And on the legal side, that work has been done by this thing called the Federalist Society, which is kind of a group of arch-conservative lawyers who are really focused on courts and getting judges appointed. And I've written about the FedSoc for years, and I've kind of always seen the threat that they pose now being, you know, realized in the likes of Brett Kavanaugh and Bill Barr.
My God, it's scary. I can't wait to see how this movie ends. I'm a little nervous, but now he's gotten more and more emboldened in his quest for authoritarian rule. I'm afraid to look at the news every morning. I'm afraid to wake up and peek. But is there any way we can stop him?
I think that we are beyond legal measures now, because he controls the law, right? Because Bill Barr has turned out to be the worst attorney general in American history, right? Just the most corrupt attorney general, the one who has no commitment to the objective law and only commitment to Donald Trump, because he seems to believe in a theory of executive power that is more like what England had under King George III, as opposed to what the American Revolution was all about. Because of all of these things, the legal measures to stop Trump's kind of authoritarian power grabs are very limited. What we do have, and what we've seen can work is people on the streets, right? We always have the right of civil disobedience. We always have the ability to protest. And when we protest, when we get out and march and activate and fight and scream and, make ourselves, put our bodies in front of the stormtroopers, that is what we have left now.
Well, and he's doing everything he can to take that away from us. No, I mean, those federal goons, I mean, it's a little scary. It's not that much different than what's going on in Hong Kong, what was going on in Hong Kong and other places.
Absolutely. But you also have to look at the kind of the story of protest, not just in our country. I'm so glad you brought up Hong Kong, but throughout the world. I noted last week last week when we were taping this, that people saw that there was this huge explosion in Lebanon of a fireworks factory. And it wasn't a terrorist attack, it was incompetence. It was, they had left these fireworks, people had been complaining about it, and it exploded and it killed, like 15 people. The Lebanese government fell. Yeah. In a week. Because people were like, we will not stand for this level of incompetence. Go back to a year and a half ago. The Puerto Rican government fell because people took it, right? So let's be clear. People getting activated, people getting in the streets and demanding better from their government works here and it works worldwide. It just takes a level of it takes real commitment, though. It takes risk. People who have been out there protesting, risking this terrible pandemic, but they're also risking, as you point out, Michael, they're risking the stormtroopers. They're risking the rubber bullets. They're risking the tear gas and the pepper spray. And Trump might make us risk more before it's over. And that's kind of scary to contemplate, but be assured it works. People who are willing, I've said a lot ever since he was elected about the resistance. It is easy. It is easy to get people who are willing to fight and kill for something they believe in. That's actually easy. And that's actually not super helpful. What's helpful and what's hard is when people are willing to die for what they believe in, right? And what we've started to see over the summer, basically, is that critical, important change. People who are not ready to hurt others for what they believe, but who are ready or willing to be hurt themselves for what they believe. And once you get that level of resistance, that's when things can change.
It's sad what it takes to get that level of resistance. That's the problem.
And it's not something, this is supposed to be a democracy. Like, this is people shouldn't have to risk their lives to vote, right? People shouldn't have to risk their lives to have a postal service. He's putting us into he's forcing us into terrible choices. But what we're starting to see is people willing to make those terrible choices, and at the risk of life and limb.
I've been an activist for equal justice, and against police brutality for several years, a few years, a little bit ahead of the curve. So it's nice to see finally what you're talking about is that now it's a world of difference. I was the only white-headed guy I saw in those protests 5-6 years ago, and now it's great. Everybody has so it is possible to make change. And
look, I covered one of the things I've lamented is the fact that, we were talking about Above the Law earlier. Everything that I wrote on Above the Law after Michael Brown was killed, everything that I wrote on Above the Law after Ferguson, after Eric Garner was killed, everything I wrote Above the Law talking about Sean Bell being killed, I could write today in The Nation about the death of George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks and the lack of arrest of Breonna Taylor's killers and all of that. There is a deja vu for some of my posts. One of the only differences between now and 5 years ago after Ferguson, or 10 years ago after Bell, is the multi-racial, multi-ethnic tenor of these protests, right? And if you look at Ferguson, it was primarily a black crowd, a black and brown crowd willing to take to the streets. You look at George Floyd, it's all those same black people. We're still here. We didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But now we've been joined by some people who seem more interested in being allies, and that is hopeful. That
is hopeful. Well, things have to get really, really bad before people are motivated to make change. I think that if Hillary, I had said this the other day, if Hillary had been elected, the status quo would have stayed the same, and we wouldn't have had all those white people out there. But Trump is such a racist. I mean, that white people are saying, "Oh, come on, this is too much for me."
He swallows the dog whistle. I mean, like, again, I like to point out, Trump exists because of a larger support system that's been in place for decades, right? But Trump says the quiet part out loud. Trump makes it undeniable. All you feel, was that really supposed to be racist? Trump's like, yes, that was supposed to be racist, right? And so it makes it obvious.
It's always a hot mic. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And why is say Mitt Romney, every elected Republican willing to give up our democracy and our economy and everything else just to stay, because they're afraid of him? Does that shock you? That surprises me.
It's power. I mean, again, there's nothing we can talk about. There are Republicans like Mitt Romney who don't like Trump's rhetoric. They don't like what he says. They don't like his manner. But the policies, all Trump does is deliver these Republicans victories on issues that they could not win with popular election, right? They cannot get their bigotry kind of rubber stamped at the ballot box anymore. Trump delivers them victory in the form of arch conservative justices who will do the work of restricting voter rights and gerrymandering districts and tamping down gay and lesbian rights, right? Like, Trump delivers them those victories. They couldn't get these tax cuts. We're in the middle of a recession and pandemic. They couldn't get these tax cuts from somebody else, but Trump delivers them that, right? So what these Republicans want is what they've always wanted, power, and Trump delivers them that power. He does it in a manner that some of them, don't like, but they like what they like the check in the mail, They don't maybe like the packaging of it, but they like the package.
Well, they're not thinking that far ahead, I believe, because Trump has no loyalty to anyone. I mean, Michael Cohen, asked him. And just this morning, I was listening to him bad-mouthing the governor of Florida, right?
Yeah, but I mean...
So if he gets in, he's king for life. He doesn't need them. They won't have power. It'll just be him.
But he doesn't actually have a policy agenda, right? His only policy agenda is, if Obama did it, then no. So it's people like Stephen Miller who have an entire kind of white nationalist philosophy that they want to get through, that actually kind of control the levers of government right now. It's people like Bill Barr who has an entire monarchical agenda that he wants to get through that control the levers of power now. I don't know why I can't say that word today. So that's what they're getting out of it, right? So yeah, they can and look, I can imagine this party, the Republican Party as it's constituted now, if Trump wins in 2024 and he decides to not run again in 2028, which just because there's a constitutional amendment doesn't mean they'll listen to it. He'll just nominate Ivanka.
Yeah.
And the Lindsey Grahams of the world already kind of completely debased themselves. They'll just go for Ivanka. They don't mind giving the Trump family a monarchical figurehead on American power for as long as his line has a progenitor. As long as they get to control the power behind the scenes, which is what they get to do right now.
Wow. Well, everything that he's done and been doing, the thing that scares me the most now is the post office thing. I mean, the suppressing the vote at that level. And as a lawyer, you're telling me there's really nothing we can do, nothing legally. What
messing with the mail is a federal crime. Everybody who's watched an episode of The Untouchables back in the day, or a couple episodes of Law and Order, messing with the mail is a federal crime. It's a felony. You have to have somebody to prosecute that. Currently, AG Bill Barr is not willing to prosecute mail fraud, so they can get away with mail fraud. If they lose, I mean, I've said this a couple of times now, but Postmaster General DeJong, or whatever his name is, he should be aware that if Biden should win, and we have a Democratic AG, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren, or maybe Adam Schiff, who knows, right?
Hey,
that some of these crimes that he commits today will be prosecuted in the future, but we have to win first. Because if Democrats don't win, and by a margin, because he's trying to steal it, if Democrats don't win, then they will get away with these crimes.
So what's the best way for people to vote then? The safest way, the surest thing?
Well, I'm going to split those questions. I'll take the last one first, because unfortunately, safety is not something we can think about. The safest way,
I mean, safe that their vote, they'll be able to vote, it'll count.
Because I'm saying that we are in a point where we have to ask people, and I hate to do this, but we have to ask people to risk their lives to go vote. If you cannot vote early, and by early, I don't mean a week before the election. Mm-hmm. Again, we're recording this early August, middle August. Former President Barack Obama, still my president, tweeted out today, in the middle of August, if you can vote early in your state, vote now. Today, vote now.
Yeah.
So so you can be sure that your vote counts, and B, it frees up any kind of last minute crunch, for election officials, and C, so you can go help somebody else vote tomorrow. If you have the opportunity, my state doesn't have early voting this early. I live in New York, but if I did the right thing, I've already requested my absentee ballot, right? And as soon as that comes in, I will vote. Yeah. So, voting early, we need to not have election day. We need to have election month.
Yes. Well, we know what we need, but they don't want to give it to us. That's all true. I guess I don't understand why. There's Fox News, obviously, which is pretty damaging. But I just cannot believe, no matter however things are spun, that people aren't more upset. It's not just you and me. I mean, everybody should be this upset about the right. If the guy doesn't want you to vote, isn't that a red flag for any thinking human being?
I saw a poll. Trump is losing is winning amongst white people without a college degree, 60-40. He is getting trounced by everybody else, almost 70-30.
Okay.
That is our divide. There is the aggrieved white base of the Republican Party feels that even if Trump hurts them, he hurts me more, and they are all in on at least hurt the other guys as much as you're hurting us, Donald.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at. That's all he has to say. All Trump has to do is prove that I'm more, put out by his racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobic, bigoted policies than a white farmer is put out, and they'll vote for Trump. Wow.
Yeah, that's sadly accurate. Well, I try to get people as upset as I am with my art. And so
which is beautiful, by the way. I mean, I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you is that, I think that people need to get this information through any and all medium possible, right? So like I can talk and write, you can draw. Some people visually, they understand it a little bit more viscerally when they see it, right? I use a lot of humor. Sometimes people need that dose of, spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down, right? Like people who can write songs about it should be writing songs about it, right? People who can do interpretive dances about how bad Trump is should be doing interpretive dance, like however it is that you can express to others what is really going on in the country needs to happen. And so I really appreciate your work.
Well, if there's a favorite of yours, I'll send you a poster. So.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I've got some space on my wall still.
Apparently, yeah. Checking it out. Well, listen, that's basically it. I appreciate your participation so much. Like I said, I'm a big fan. And, well, let's just hope things work out.
Absolutely, Michael. Vote early. Vote early.
Thank you, Elie Mystal. Well, what can I say? You got to love Elie. And you're going to love Toure, too, coming up next. First, I just want to mention that this is all about getting people excited to vote. And something they've been using for years to get people to vote are yard signs and posters. And I've designed a couple myself. So, with these Biden-Harris yard signs and posters, let people know that you're on the right side of history. And maybe it'll encourage them to join us. So just go to artandresponse.com and pick up your posters and yard signs there. Just might make all the difference this November. My next guest is a writer, a cultural critic, a podcaster, and a television personality. His books include Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness? What It Means to Be Black Now, and I Never Drank the Kool-Aid. Like Madonna and Cher, he only needs one name. Please welcome Toure.
How are you, Michael?
Hi, Toure. Thank you so much for coming. So listen, we're in the middle of a major pandemic, global warming, and economic depression, and another racially motivated civil war all knocking at our door. And at this time, we have a criminally insane despot in the White House denying it all. Now, save Mitt Romney, possibly. There's not one Republican in office willing to put country before party and save us from all this. So my question to you to start is, my first question is, how come you never asked me to do the cover of one of your books? But we'll get to that later. After that, less importantly, but what worries you the most?
I mean, the country has a lot of work to do just to continue to deal with, how it treats Black people. The police brutality, police violence issue is sort of the tip of the spear of that, but that also touches on, the wealth gap, mass incarceration, segregation, the way that, taxation is very localized when it comes to schools, but not when it comes to anything else, right? So my tax dollars pay for parks throughout New York City where I live that I will never visit, and police officers who will never beat me up, but my tax dollars only go to the very localist public school. Like, so how is that? But, I mean, one thing I'm definitely concerned about is Trumpism, because even if he loses, which I feel confident that he will lose, there's still this sense of the awakening of his people, right? That he has had. He has told them, it is okay to feel emboldened to be white. It is okay to be racist in public. It is okay to blame Mexicans and Chinese and Blacks for your problems, right? It is okay. I mean, I think the explosion of Karen videos is partly because of, the ubiquity of cameras, but also because of a Trumpian sort of message that it is okay to be racist in public. It's okay to tell, Sikh people, you should cut your beard, and Black people, you're not really from here. These things are okay. that's not excuse me, that's not just going to go away because Trump loses, right? Like he has given them the space and the pride to beat their chest and to say like, I am white, I am powerful, I am here, get out of my way. That's not going to go away because he loses. So what does Trumpism become? And if we think about the Tea Party morphed into Trumpism, you see how this thing could flow into something far more dangerous over time, in a Biden and perhaps in a future Harris administration.
So what's the answer? How do we prevent that? How do we fix it? The Germans did. I mean, you don't hear them, well, for many years at least, you haven't heard them, raising the Nazi flag or anything like that. They've had a different attitude. So can we change?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied the history of modern Germany, so I can't analogize that. I think that's a lot different. I don't know. We have a large portion of this country, a solid 35% of the country, that is purposefully uninformed about the reality of the country. They watch Fox News, they listen to Rush and Mark Levin and these sort of crazy people, and they are completely misinformed and disinformed about reality. How do you reach them? Because they vote and they are part of the country. How do we reach them? How do we tell them, this is not what you're talking about is not reality? Because not only are they in a bubble, but they are also rejecting of liberals, media, science, fact. I mean, like I have an uncle who was a Trump supporter from early in the primary. And when I asked him what, and this is a black gay man in Massachusetts, right?
Trump supporter,
right? Okay. A senior citizen. So on paper, you'd be like, well, surely this person, and no, and I said, well, why would you support Trump? And this is back in the primaries, and he said because they are streaming across the border, and we need to stop this, or we won't have a country. You're in Massachusetts, and you're concerned about immigration and border policy. That doesn't make any sense. But also, that's not true. They're not streaming across the border. Immigration has been at a net negative for over a decade. More people are leaving the country than are coming. So this fear mongering around they're streaming across the border and we won't have a country anymore is just based in fantasy, right?
Well, Trump may be right. Mexico might pay for the wall just to keep us out.
I mean,
the way things are going.
Point, the U.S. passport means we can't go pretty much anywhere in the world. Yeah. So we have a virtual wall. But how do you reach a group of people who are against reality and are not understanding reality and are not informed about reality and are functioning based on ideas that are just not realistic?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because, as you say, there's such a distrust among them for the mainstream media, as they call it. Maybe that's where the art comes in. I've done billboards, mobile billboards around the Capitol building. There's street art. Sometimes a piece of art, hopefully, can viscerally hit somebody right in the gut and send that message. And if it's on a billboard or on a truck somewhere, a quick message, they have to see it. They can't turn it off. They can't call that fake news because they can't shut it off.
I mean, I think what you're talking about is really important on two levels. Because yes, art can and historically does shock people, open people up to new ideas and new perspectives. But quite often, art is locked away in the institutions, and you have to go to a museum or a gallery in order to experience it. So when you're putting art in public spaces, that's like moving, or it's on a billboard
Right.
where real people are. I think that's really powerful and important in terms of exposing people to art. I mean, I really did appreciate, one of the things I appreciated about the Michael Bloomberg administration in New York City is that he was very big on green lighting public art uh, uh, spectacles.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Jean-Claude and Christo did the gates in Central Park, and I forget the name of the artist. There was this waterfall piece coming off of I think it was the Manhattan Bridge, and there were some other public pieces that happened. And I definitely think art should leave the museum and gallery space and exist in the world, so it finds people rather than people having to go and find it. I think that's really powerful. So I salute you for doing that.
Also, I mean, not just visual art, but music. I mean, there used to be so many protest songs. I guess a lot of the rap music is protest. What do you think? Can it change hearts and minds?
I'm very disappointed in the state of political hip hop right now. The hip hop of the 80s and 90s definitely had a political spine. It spoke back to Reagan and Bush, and to a lesser extent the second Bush, and really talked about like what was going on in the world in a political way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've really gotten away from that, and artists are not talking about Trump and BLM and the violence from Trayvon to Eric Garner to George Floyd to Breonna Taylor. They're not talking about that in a way that I would expect. And it's disappointing to see hip hop not taking up those really important situations.
And why aren't they? I just,
I don't want to overgeneralize. I think some of the rappers are a little bit younger.
mm-hmm.
I think some of the rappers are a little bit more sort of focused on pop success in terms of how do I get lots of people to listen to this song, rather than how do I, like I want to include these sort of messages in the song. I think to a certain extent, groupthink is a sort of negative word, but like there was so much of it in the 80s and 90s that people felt encouraged to do that and to make a reference to police brutality or Ronald Reagan or George H.W. Bush didn't feel strange because there were so many people making those sort of references. And now with far fewer, you may feel like you stand out more. I don't know what kind of pressure the record labels are able to put on people now
That's what
that they weren't putting on them before, when we had a smaller record industry footprint before, because a lot of, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the music came out of smaller labels. And now everything's part of gigantic conglomerates. But I'm not entirely sure of the reason why.
I know my art has been censored many times. And misused, so it's hard to get through.
That should be a compliment, right? That means you're doing something right.
I always take it as a compliment. And what they do when they protest the art is they just bring more attention to it. So, thank you, Fox News. I mean,
right.
So how worried should the ordinary average citizen be, and what can they do?
How worried should the average citizen be? I mean, I am not among those who are worried. I know that it is fun to be worried, and maybe fun is the wrong word. Like, as a media person, I don't gain attention and excite the viewers by saying, I'm not really worried, we're winning this game by a lot. Now, things can change, but you don't usually see massive changes to an incumbent's vote tally from this late in the game when his vote tally is extremely consistent to what it has been.
Yeah.
This is not a presidency where his approval rating has, gone up and down. His approval rating has been more consistent than anyone ever. There is a block of about 40% of the country that likes him no matter what, and almost no matter what, nobody will join that. But when you have unemployment skyrocketing, college football canceled, and this is a big deal in the Midwest.
It is a big deal.
Right?
You're right, for a lot of people.
A lot of people are sick or afraid of corona. I mean, like almost everybody's life, day-to-day life, has been changed by corona. And it's pretty rare to be able to say a tangible day-to-day impact on your life that comes from the federal government, right? Like most people don't have that, right? They don't, maybe, Obamacare changes and like, okay, so that's a change. But for the most part, the federal government's impact on our lives is a little different. But here's like, a gigantic federal screw up that then has left all of us, changed lives. In terms of the numbers, you see Biden winning among seniors, which is Democrats have not won seniors since 2000. You see Biden winning significantly among people who don't like either candidate, right? Hillary lost that group by a much smaller margin. So if people who don't like either candidate are saying they like Biden, that would suggest to me that as the race goes on, they are going to break for Biden, and he's going to increase the significant lead that he already has even more.
Despite the post office and all that, everything else they're doing too.
Well, I am concerned, as we all should be, about the monkeying around that we see with the mail and stuff. And I would just encourage folks to vote in person if at all possible, especially if you live in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida. Like, just please go to the poll and or do whatever you can just to make certain that you are counted. Because Trump cannot withstand losing any of those three big states that I just mentioned.
Right.
Biden is winning in all of them by significant margins. And when I say that, that doesn't mean everybody relax, go home, the election's over, don't go vote. Like,
you remember 2016, right? We were all thinking it was going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I think there's a number of dynamics that impacted that race that are not at play here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have an incumbent president that the country has been unhappy with for a while, and they are acutely unhappy with now because, as I said, of Corona and the economy. Michael, all of this year could have played out very differently for Trump. I mean, I think about if he had said in March or April, we're going to give every American $3,000 a month until, I don't know, November, to help get everybody through this incredibly difficult time, we might be looking at Trump leading by 6, 7, 8 points. Because you start putting money in people's pockets directly from the government month after month, people might be like, oh man, this is the sort of person that he claims to be, right? The deal maker who cuts through the bullshit, but he only thinks about CEOs and corporations. So They thought about giving big grants to CEOs and corporations, smaller bits to smaller businesses, nothing, very little to nothing to what was there, like a single $2,300 check?
He wants to cut the capital gains. Now, how's that going to help anybody without a job?
I mean, there's some unemployment, $600 unemployment benefit that they're arguing over. This isn't even complicated. Like, I remember, when I was in high school, and it would be like, they would announce like, okay, we're going to do the election for like class president in 3 days or something. And then everyone would start to act really nice and polite to each other. and would go out of their way to talk to people they never talked to and laugh at their jokes. And it was all very transparent.
Yes.
But we were all like, well, I want to win, and this is the way that I have a chance. Trump has not approached election year as if it were an election year where, like, I need to make sure that I deliver, that I step up, that I get things done, that I make people happy this year. It's bizarre.
Well, just today, he declare the Middle East peace in the Middle East now? Isn't that the deal?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I mean, he said that if he's reelected, he'll make a deal with Iran. Like, so this is supposed to be like some present for us if he's reelected, and not like, I'm going to do the job until the last day. Like, I'll get you this if you reelect me, but if you don't, then like.
Well, I hope that president's gift wrapped with his tax returns.
I would love to see the tax returns. I mean, like, it's kind of amazing that we still have never seen any of the tax returns, not even from when he's. I mean, like, you would think, like, even like from when you're in the White House, like, I'm not doing anything weird now. Like, so now I'll let you see, continuing the lie that, like, the other one was under audit. Like, still, this is the longest audit in American history. It's fucking ridiculous. And I don't get mad at the American people for not being madder, because I think that we have been at maximum outrage since since he was elected, or since sometime in the campaign in 2016. So I can't get more outraged.
You look pretty relaxed, I gotta tell you.
Well, at this moment, but I mean, like, if you were to open, like, my heart or my mind, and you're like, how are you feeling about Trump? I mean, just like you've been on maximum outrage for about 4 years now. So I mean, like, how I can't get more outraged about what's going on.
I get it. Okay, well, listen, I really want to thank you for doing this.
Sure.
I could talk to you all day or listen to you all day. Well, I really could listen to Toure all day, and Elie, and Ron, and Malcolm, and Peter, all great Americans who gave their time generously because they know just how important this election is. And now it's all up to the rest of us. Get out there and vote, and together, let's save this democracy.